Hey guys, it is Holy Basil back with another video, and we are back between the rack. And in today's video, I want to discuss a video from David Shear, a Christian fitness influencer that I'm a big fan of actually, from a video that he made a couple days ago in which he had this big confession.
Because I preach that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and you should glorify God in all that you consume. While at the same time, I myself have been relying on caffeine and other stimulants to just get through my day-to-day workload.
And I think everybody got it wrong, and I'm going to try and break it down my thoughts on the matter. Now, overall, David is a great influence. He preaches being natural. He discusses great training principles, being a disciple, being righteous, and is just very, I'd say, wholesome in general. He's married, he has a child, building a homestead. What's not to like about that? To me, the conclusion of the video is that he is relying on something more than he's relying on God. And in this case, it's caffeine, energy drinks, and he is relying on that for strength rather than getting strength from the Lord. Now, the comment section's all torn up. They're saying, oh, well, caffeine is not a sin, and are you Mormon? And asking a lot of questions, and I don't think that that's what he was going for. I think that he knows that caffeine is not a sin, that it's just merely a tool, but instead of being a tool for him at this point, it was being a crutch. And I can personally attest to this because I have my own history with stimulants. I work 12-hour shifts, and sometimes it's hard to have energy to work out beforehand, and working a lot of shifts sometimes it's just exhausting. And I've been prescribed modafinil about a little over a year ago, and watching this video from David really opened my eyes and made me realize that I'm convicted too. Now, modafinil is a useful drug for people if they have narcolepsy or some type of disorder, but I think that I was using it as a crutch, just like David was with caffeine, to stay awake, to have a sharp edge, to get things done. And I grew to have a conviction about it, and his video was the final thread for me. So yes, we all get tired sometimes, and it really is nice to have some coffee or some type of pre-workout, and I don't think that's sinful at all, but it's when you rely on that to have the workout, or when you idolize that above everything else, above your workout. So I feel like I've mentioned the word idol a few times in this discussion already, and Webster Dictionary defines idolatry as the excessive devotion or reverence for some person or thing. So I believe in this case that caffeine could be his idol, and in my case it was modafinil to be the idol. Now, when we think about idols from a Christian standpoint, we think about back in the day with the Israelites and golden calves and little wooden pieces that people worship. And we write those things off, oh, I don't do that, I wouldn't do that. But I believe that we are giving the devotion and glory to a number of objects or things or ideas that do become idols to us. Exodus 20 verses 3 through 6 says, "You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, or any likeness of what is in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth." Jonah 2:8 says, "Those who regard vain idols forsake their faithfulness." So I have a lot of respect for David here because he is acknowledging a conviction in his life, and that is the caffeine. And it might seem small to some people, but it's a conviction to him, and we have to take that seriously. For as we grow in our relationship with God, so should our convictions. I think the aspect of caffeine falls perfectly in line with 1 Corinthians 10:23. Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. And that could change from time to time. You know, you might be able to have a drink of alcohol, but if you have that frequently, then that might become an idol to you. You might be relying on it. You might be putting that above God, because God really should be our source of strength, our sustenance. As noted by these scriptures, Philippians 4:13, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." Isaiah 41:10 says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Now, the topic of relying on God reminds me of Matthew chapter 14, starting in verse 22. And it's an interaction between Jesus and Peter. And in verse 22, it reads, "Immediately he," or Jesus, "made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. After dismissing the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a mile from the land, battered by the waves because the wind was against them. Around 3 in the morning, he came toward them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. 'It's a ghost,' they said, and cried out in fear. Immediately Jesus spoke to them. 'Have courage, it is I. Don't be afraid.' 'Lord, if it's you,' Peter answered him, 'command me to come on the water.' 'Come,' Jesus said. And climbing out of the boat, Peter started walking on the water and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, 'Lord, save me.' Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught a hold of him, and said to him, 'You have little faith, why did you doubt?' When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those in the boat worshipped him and said, 'Truly, you are the Son of God.'" Proverbs 3 verse 5 says, "Trust in the Lord your God with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." And here I think we see Peter doing a perfect example of leaning on his own understanding, leaning on his own trust, leaning on his own reliance of the world rather than leaning on God and getting his strength from God. And because of that, he was not able to walk on water. Because of that, he started sinking and drowning. I think in our own lives, we can apply this by, instead of doing what God tells us to do through his word, by doing what the world tells us to do, doing what we think that we need to do. And for David, that was taking a lot of caffeine and energy drinks to find the motivation to have workouts. Or for me, the same thing, but with modafinil, having the energy to do things rather than praying for strength from God, rather than doing the things that we know to do, but we try to take matters into our own hands and we end up drowning. Now, where do we go from here in our walk with God and these convictions? Does that mean that just as we grow closer with God, he's just going to convict us of everything we do? No, absolutely not. But anything that isn't just pure blatant sin, if we put it above God, he should give us conviction because we can't serve two masters. God said, "Have no other gods before me." And that's what we do sometimes. It's just our natural inclinations as broken sinners to do so. But the good news is that we have Jesus who gave himself as a sacrifice for us, and so we can be dead to the world, we can be born again, we can be a new creation, and we don't have to serve those sinful ways. We just have to spend quality time with God and pray that he would reveal those things to us. Peace.